All right, let's see what, can I get this to turn? Here we go. I'll give people like a minute to just look at it. Based on your answer in part E, assume a flexible exchange rate system. Will current X's currency appreciate, depreciate, or remain the same? The supply of current country X's currency increased. So give people like 35 or 45 seconds to think about it, and then I'll ask you to chat your answer. Okay, what do we have? Appreciate, depreciate, or remain the same. What do we got? We've got depreciate. Okay, we've got depreciate, and depreciate is correct. If I guess I could just graph a quick one. If the loanable funds, if the foreign exchange market, and this is country X, if supply increases, it's below the equilibrium, therefore it would depreciate. Now, if country X's currency depreciated, what would happen to net exports? Would net exports increase, decrease, or stay the same? If country X's money depreciated, like you said, what happens to net exports? Increase, decrease, or stay the same? What do we have? We have an increase. Anyone else? Okay, we have an increase, right? Because their goods appear to be cheap, so they're going to increase. Now, if net exports increase, what happens to that country's current account? Surplus, deficit, or stays the same? If net exports increase, what happens to that country's current account? All right, we're getting surplus, and it is a surplus, and the financial account would be in a deficit. All right, good job on that one. Oh, by the way, 31% of the country got this question right. Okay, I don't know. I didn't think it was that like unbelievable that only 31% got it right. All right. All right, here, draw a correctly labeled graph of aggregate demand and short-run aggregate supply. Show the impact of equilibrium price level and real GDP of the fiscal policy in part C. All right, so you're at equilibrium, and you could put an LRAS in here, you know, if you're drawing it. So you're at equilibrium. In part C, government increased spending or taxes were lowered. I'll give you a minute to like draw the graph, or if you're not drawing it, at least to think what's shifting in what direction, and then we'll come back to it. Okay, I'm going to ask you before I show you the graph, what curve shifts in which direction? All right, what curve shifts and in which direction? All right, on the count to three, 1, 2, 3, which curve shifted in which direction? We got SRAS right. Okay. All right, we got AD and we got a correction. AD shifts right. Okay. And okay. So, all right. This is, by the way, from the College Board. Assuming the first point, and I'll show you the graph in a second. The second point, the point missed in 69% of the responses, meaning 31% required the students to show an AD curve shifting right. I am amazed that government spending or decrease in taxes, only 31% of the country got right. This is like 2017. It's not that long ago. But anyhow, there it is. There is the shift. You had PL, you could have made it PL1, PL RGEP. That got you 2 points. If you had the LRAS in there, you'd have been fine. And I don't know what was going on in the country that year. I should look up my results. I mean, we had a crush if that's what people were doing. All right, if the central bank wishes to reverse the change in interest rates identified in Part A, what open market operations would it use? All right, so they're trying to reverse interest rates that fell. I'll give you a minute to think about it. And of course, as we're going through, if you have a question, please chat it at me. All right, I'll count to 3. 1, 2, 3. What do we have? We've got sell bonds, sell bonds, sell bonds. Okay. Now, only 25% of the nation got this right. The only thing I could see is people not reading open market operations and maybe increasing the discount rate or increasing the reserve requirement. But this is another one that is kind of baffling. All right. So say the United States sold bonds. What would happen to the dollar? Would the dollar appreciate, depreciate, or stay the same? Give people like a minute to think. If the United States sold bonds, so interest rates went up now. So let's say interest rates are up. What would happen to the dollar? Would it appreciate, depreciate, or stay the same? I'll give people some time to think. Okay, I'll count to 3 and tell me what you got. 1, 2, 3. All right, I'm getting all appreciate, and that's right. Interest rates are high in the United States. Therefore, people are looking for US dollars and it'll appreciate. Okay, so there is the central bank should sell bonds. All right, here is, this to me is a good practice. So if you do have paper, you should graph this because we haven't done a lot of Phillips curve. Assume that the economy of country X has an actual unemployment rate of 7%, a natural rate of unemployment at 5%, and an inflation rate of 3%. Using the numerical values given above, draw a correctly labeled graph of the short and long run Phillips curve. All right, so they want a short and long run Phillips curve, label the current short run equilibrium as point B, and plot the numerical values above. All right. I'm going to give you a minute or so to graph it. I hope you have a piece of paper and you're graphing, because this is one we haven't done a lot of work on. Okay. I'm going to show you what it looks like. Okay. So you had the natural rate of unemployment, which is the long run Phillips curve, at 5%. You had actual at 3 and unemployment at 7. Now, this equilibrium, and they didn't have it in the problem, but it's worth saying that would be expected inflation. All right. So expected inflation maybe was 5%. Okay. Any questions on the Phillips curve? Just for a short review, we would slide opposite aggregate demand and we'd shift opposite SRAS. So for a quick example, while we have the Phillips curve here, we would, if there was stagflation, which is a leftward supply, we would shift the Phillips curve out to the right. A PI sim. Oh, that's inflation. I don't know why it's like that, Jordan. That should be marked inflation. It's an interesting, because it is a College Board thing. Okay, so could we get to the next slide? Referring to the answer in part C, will the long run aggregate supply curve shift to the right, to the left, or remain the same? In part C, the country produced more capital goods than it had previously. All right, I'll give you like 30 seconds, and then I'll ask you, are we going right, left, or remain the same? Okay. I will count up to 3. 1, 2, 3. Tell me which way we're shifting here. All right, we've got 2 rights. Anyone else? Maybe a couple. Okay, we're going right here. All right. And the reason is because we're increasing capital stock. All right. And by the way, 22.6% got this right. But this is a question they ask a lot in free responses. Like, it could be interest rates down. What effect does that affect the LRAS curve? Well, interest rates down, investment up, LRAS right. Okay. And then, if interest rates are up, investment down, economic growth slows down. Okay. Okay. Based on the change in interest rates in Part A, what will happen to each of the following? All right. So the interest rates fell. So I'm going to give you a minute. If interest rates are down, to think what happens to the prices of previously issued bonds and what happens to price level and real income. So I give you like a minute to think about that. Okay, first thing, if interest rates fall, does price levels of bonds increase, decrease, or stay the same? What do we got? Increase, decrease, or stay the same? I got Matt on an increase. I've got Walter on an increase. Okay, they're going to increase. The value of bonds are inversely related to the interest rates. And the reason is if interest rates fall, people want the older bonds because they have higher interest rates. So the demand for those bonds increases. All right, let's talk about price level. If interest rates fall, will price level increase, decrease, or stay the same? Increase, decrease, or stay the same for price level? Okay, I've got the increases because interest rates are down, investments up, AD to the right, and real income also increases. Okay. Okay. I'm going to give you a minute to draw a correctly labeled graph of the money market. Remember to label everything up and show the effect of reduced holdings of money on nominal interest rates. Okay. Okay. I'm going to ask you what shifts in which direction. Okay. So on 3, what shifts and in which direction? What do we got? MD up. Demand left. Anyone else? Oh, have some spirit. Okay. So if you reduce holdings of money, it means you're holding less money. So therefore, demand is, and that red thing shouldn't be there. That was just from a previous. So demand is going to shift left. Okay. So MD to the left. Walt, does that make sense to you?
Sorry, can you go over it again?
Yeah, sure. Because you reduce holdings of money, it means you're holding less money in your pocket. And that's why demand shifts left, because demand is actually how much money you're willing to hold in your pocket.
Oh, so money holdings is not like, they're spending more, so they'll need more money.
No, no, it's like literally, I had 100, now I'm holding 80.
Okay, got it. Thank you.
Okay. I thought it was the wording that could have been tricky. All right. All right, here's like a good review question, I think. With a constant money supply, based on your answer in part B2, will the velocity of money increase, decrease, or remain the same? Now, in part B2, price level and real income increased. I'll give you a minute to try to think this out. Okay, I'm going to count to 3 and tell me what's going to happen to the velocity of money. Increase, decrease, or remain the same. 1, 2, 3. What do we got? Increase, decreases stay the same. I've got an increase. I've got an increase with the question mark. I've got an increase. All right. So let's look at the equation. The equation is M, which we said is constant. All right. Times V, which is the velocity of money. M is the money supply, equals P, which is price level, which we said is going up, times Y, which is output or real GDP. If real income increases, output has to increase, right? Because on the LRAS graph, our GDP, income, and employment all go in the same direction. So if income increased, real GDP, so Y has to go up. So if P is going up and Y is going up, this side has to go up. If M's constant, V has to increase. Okay. Any questions on that one? That again is not a formula we play around with a lot, so could be tricky there. All right, next question. Based on the change in real GDP identified in D and real GDP increased, will the supply of country X's currency in the foreign exchange market increase, decrease, or stay the same? Give you a minute to think. This is country X. I'm going to apologize in advance for these graphs and for not doing the equilibriums because it's hard for me to graph. Okay. So based on the change in real GDP increased, will the currency in the foreign exchange market for country X, whose real GDP increased, will the supply of country X currency increase, decrease, or remain the same? What do we have? No one? No one? No one wants to take a guess? All right, we've got decrease, increase. All right, I'm country X. Real GDP increased in my country, meaning income increased in my country. If income increased in my country, that means I have more money so I could buy country-wise goods. I am going to demand country-wise currency. When I go to the foreign exchange market, I am going to have to give them my country X's currency. So the supply for country X is going to increase. Okay. So could I get that down there? So the supply of country will increase because the residents of country X will increase their spending on imports. All right, a couple of guys did not get that one. Does anyone have any questions on it? You could either put on your mic or you could chat it up, whichever way. But I want to make sure you're clear. Okay. Just remember, one of the keys, and it's happened like twice in these 10, is realizing that real GDP and real income are both the same. Okay. All right. Assume the government of country X takes no policy action to reduce unemployment in the long run. Reduce unemployment. In the long run, will each of the following shift to the right, shift to the left, or remain the same? Short run aggregate supply, long run Phillips curve. So part A, the economy is operating below full employment. So below full employment, that means I'd be here and full employment is here, right? All right, so I will give you like 30 or 45 seconds to think what will happen to the short run aggregate supply curve and what will happen to the long run Phillips curve. Okay. First up, short run aggregate supply curve, right, left, or stay the same? Right, left, or stay the same? SRAS, right, left, or stay the same? I've got rights, I've got rights. All right. So I'm going to shift that right and you're right. All right, type in what causes the short run aggregate supply curve to shift right. What's the cause for the explanation? All right, decrease wages, great, decrease wages. Okay, the long run Phillips curve, left, right, or stay the same? Left, right, or stay the same? Jordan's got the same. People agree or disagree? Same. For Matt, it is going to stay the same, right? If the LRAS doesn't shift, the Phillips curve doesn't shift. And the LRAS would shift change in capital investment or capital stock, change in quantity or quality of resources, and change in technology. All right. I usually like to leave at 8. We've got one more question. Let's knock that out if everyone's okay. All right. By the way, 6% of the country. Oh, I put the answer up. Based on the change in interest in Part A, what will happen to the following? Although we did this already, right? We did this one already. Okay, 6% got this right. Phew. All right, anyone have any questions on anything we did tonight or any questions on anything going on? If you have a question, you could either turn on your mic or chat it up. If not, you could leave and have a good night. I will be doing the morning review.